Okay, let me use this one here. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here with you guys. Um, Let me go back a little bit and talk a little bit more about myself and how I developed this idea to teach my students how to write a paper. When I was a grad student, many years ago, and you can put it many years ago, I was struggling, you know, to write a research paper. It was my first time as a master's student try to write a research paper. And one of the things that I learned along the years, and it was following the advice of my advisor. You know, he was a guy that really pushed me. He pushed me to the limit. I'm not kidding. No, and why that? He said that I had potential, but I had to learn how to write a paper. Okay, that's one of the things. And the first thing that he told me, it was a paper, nothing more than telling a story and write the story in a piece of paper. Looks easy, right? And in fact, it is. Now, writing, nothing more than learn how to write. And we get this. No, and I tell my students that if I could do it, you can do it. Okay. When I was a grad student, I'm from Brazil. I was sitting in a class like with a bunch of international students, and I had no English. Was the time that you could come to the United States to learn English and do your PhD. So you can imagine the struggle for doing this type of thing. So what I'm gonna do today with you guys is try to show you that there are some tips, and I'm using the word tips because that's the way I learn it. Now that we need to follow and write a good paper. Okay, that's the way I learn it. And I try to teach this to my students. My field is agricultural economics. I'm in the Department of Geography, but my first PhD was in applied economics. My second PhD was in geography. Yeah, see, after learning how to write, it was easy to do the second one. Now, where I use GIS remote sensing to combine with econometrics, economic models, and try to model land use change. I did my postdoc at Harvard, and after that, I went back to Brazil. I was working in universities in Brazil when I was invited to come back to the United States. So, in writing a paper, we're gonna go through many challenges, okay? And I like this cartoon because that's the way I was feeling. Every time that I was talking to my advice, I was like cross one wall, break one wall, and I had another one in front of me until the end. So in every one of these steps, I was learning more and more how to do it, okay? That's what I think, that there are many challenges that we're gonna face, and we're gonna be humble in doing these things, no? So the first thing that's very important, and many of us don't think about that, is to think about what am I gonna do, okay? So what are you gonna write about? So it's writing some important questions like that. No, so before write your paper, we're gonna need to think, what's a paper? What makes a good paper? Right? Looks like a simple question, but it's very important when you are students that you are defining what you're gonna do. The first thing that's what's a good paper? And that's what we're gonna talk about here. What's a good paper? When I have a good idea. Okay. The second one that we're gonna talk here, what are the step-by-steps when we develop a paper? Okay. We're gonna talk about cover letter because a lot of students, they write a good paper, but they struggle to write a cover letter. And believe it, a cover letter is so important like a good paper because the reviewers, they're gonna read first the cover letter before they read the paper to see if the paper that you are writing about is interesting. So a good cover letter can call the attention of the review to read your paper, okay? So you can imagine the guys receive 100 paper a week. They're not going to read the 100 paper a week. They're going to start by the cover letter. After that, they're going to move to the abstract. No, and so on. So cover letter is very important for that. Rejection letters. Rejection is not the end. It's just the beginning. I don't know how many rejection letters I received in my life. But if you had gave up in the first one, I never would publish 70 papers. No, like I have. So this is things that's very, very important. So we're going to talk about these things here in a few minutes. But let's go back and talk about now, what's a good idea? Usually the students come to the advisor and say, hey, I think I got the idea for my paper or for my dissertation. And the guy asks me, so tell me about it. And the guys start to talk about that. Say, wait. How do you know this is a good idea? So what's a good idea? What's a good idea? You guys are writing papers, right? What's a good idea? How do I know that I have a good idea? Yeah, that's a good start. Something that never have been addressed. Oh, look at the way they are talking. Never have been addressed. What else? What else? What about if you want to add something that people are doing? Is it a good idea? Yeah, you're saying yes. Why it's a good idea? I can't add any more things to the thing that people are talking about. It's not new, but I can add. That could be a good idea. The first one, never, is novelty. It's new. The second one is not new, but the way that I'm going to approach that, it's a good idea. Okay? So it's very important before we start to write, is to think about your paper. Now, think what is a good idea? How should I describe this good idea? We are not writing the paper here, okay? We are just thinking in terms of the description. What I'm doing is trying to organize my thoughts to write the paper. So how should I describe this idea in the introduction? Or how should I organize the paper? These are things that you need to think before you start to write. These are the fundamentals of a good writing. Okay, see, is it new? Why this is new? How do I know that something is new? You gotta go to the literature, guys. It's very, very important. When you go to the literature, you're gonna see if that idea that you already have is really a good idea. Okay? You're gonna see who's have done that type of work, what they wrote about, what am I gonna add to the literature. And look here, I'm using some expression here that I want you to pay attention, right? Novelty, never. What am I gonna add to the literature? Why this is important? So these are all expressions that we're gonna learn in a few minutes how to use that. So how should I organize my paper? There are many different ways. Every field, you're gonna have different ways to approaching a problem. The way people write the paper for psychology, it's probably completely different from people that work in, psychiatrists. Okay, the organization of the paper is very important. So where should I publish that? Which type of journal? How they see this type of paper in this type of journal? These are important points. The other one that people don't pay much attention. Now, what do I intend to do with my paper? Is it a research paper or it's a review? Okay. Is it a report? Is it a discussion? What I intend to do, because these things are gonna affect the way you're gonna write your paper. Okay. The other one, Why is this work? It's important. Who has already done this? So these are things that we're going to see in a few minutes here. So why should they consider these ideas? Help to see if we have a good topic. And the other thing that's like, journals, they don't like repetitions. If you are write something that everybody's writing, they're not going to publish. Why they're not going to publish? You write a paper, okay, about a subject that it's in the, all the time is in the journals. Why do you think they're not going to publish your paper? It's so common, right? What you are adding, you are not adding anything. It's just another application. Journals, they like new things. They like novelty. Why they like novelty? Because they need money, right? How they got money? Publications, no, subscriptions, right? Impact, and so on. So they want to have something that's gonna put the journal on the top. Okay, this is very important to pay attention when you write the paper here. What makes a good paper? What's make a good paper? Come on, guys. The best of this is to participate. What makes in your thoughts a good paper? Yeah. Easy to follow. Okay. Well, what that means, easy to follow. Yeah, you can really understand, you know, the paper flows easily, okay? So you're gonna see that a lot of professors are gonna get your paper, you're gonna give you back and just say, hey, this paragraph here doesn't match the previous one. What do you wanna say? It's difficult to follow. I like to say that. It's difficult to follow what you want. So a good paper, you know, is also something novel. And look at that, I'm using sometimes is novel because it doesn't need to be novel all the time, okay? So that's one. It's one that's well expressed. That's what she said. It's easy to follow. Clear indication of what you want to do, okay? The other point, the idea, evaluation of the finds in making, they know that what you need to know. So what is important in your paper? So the paper, nothing more than a story that you are telling in some way that's easy to follow. Let me give you an example here. Let's suppose that I go, you know, put my kids to go to bed every night and I tell them the story. I start to tell the story and I stop because they are sleeping. The next day, I come back again to put it in, going to bed, and they start to tell the story. But one of them comes and says, hey, wait a that. Yesterday, you told me that the lion ate the snake. Now I'm telling that the snake is eating the lion? It wasn't that way you finished. No. What was missing there? Was missing the connection. Why the lion ate the snake and now it's the other way? What happened in the middle? Many times people write a paper and they forget to make connections. And the story is completely, you know, broken. And why is that? Because we don't write to us. That's the first thing that I want to show you. We don't write to us. We write for the people that are going to read the paper. And many of the mistakes that we do, it's because we are writing to us instead of writing to the others. And we forget to make the things clear because in your mind, I know what I'm writing, okay? And if I miss something, doesn't make, you know, any difference because I'm reading that and say, oh, I know what's going on. Of course you know what's going on. You are writing the paper, you did the experiment. But the person that is reading is not following you because you missed something, okay? This is very important. You gotta write to the others. You are telling a story. And your story needs to make sense for the people that is reading that paper, okay? So what makes a good idea? Well, you gotta check if to see that this paper has any novelty. The second thing, no, have you done something new or interesting? The things that you want to develop, is it interesting? How do I know that? I go to the literature, okay? The other thing, is this the work challenging? Well, no, how difficult is to interview 1,000 people? That's probably pretty difficult, right? I said the sample size that I'm using, nobody used it before. The amount of repetition that I did in my experiment, nobody did before. And it was very difficult to develop this type of experiment. First, because the only computer that exists in the world, we need to make an appointment to use that, and 2 years in advance. Look how difficult it's challenge this type of things. And look at here, how me tell you the story. I need to tell to the guy that's reading how difficult it is to do that thing, to call attention for that, okay? What's a hot topic? My idea, it's a hot topic. What is a hot topic? Come on, guys, what's a hot topic? You guys know what's a hot topic, right? What's a hot topic in research? Huh? Oh, machine learning, it's a hot topic. I agree. What else is a hot topic? Dong. Climate change is a hot topic. Do you guys agree it's a hot topic? How do you know that machine learning and climate change are a hot topic? Oh, that's the first one. Very controversial topic, right? What else? Huh? People cares. What else? What else, guys? Is it in the media? Climate change? Yeah, usually it's in the media all the time. But one thing that I want to call your attention here is that these are only topics. They are only hot topics. What's the difference between a hot topic and the subject that I want to develop? It's because every one of these topics brings some types of problems to society. And people cares about that problem. Well, climate change, yeah, but climate change is getting awesome. It's getting better, right? I'm enjoying the climate. It was terrible cold. Is there something different? Society cares about this? Probably not. But you say that, well, we got to become very, very hot. Now we're going to start to kill people, kill plants, and society start to pay attention for that. That's why that thing's happen. Look at how I move from one topic for a problem that's important. And that's the biggest problem that I see sometimes in the student. They come to you and say, hey, professor, I got a hot topic to talk to you. I say, yeah, what is this about? Climate change. You say, okay, tell me about climate change. It's changing. I say, I know it's changing. And what else? So, well, I want to see, how climate change is affecting people. I'll say, okay, but so far, you are just going around. You're not telling me what's the problem with climate change. So make sure that you know that there is a hot topic and there is a problem associated with that topic. And that's the problem that you need to tackle, okay? Let me give you examples here. If you look at this picture here, that's a picture of deforestation in the Amazon. Is that a hot topic? It is, right? People cares. But why this is a hot topic? How should I approach? Look here, I'm trying to organize my thoughts and see how I'm going to write the paper. Look at the discussion that I'm having for that. okay? And I see that many students, when they start to think, they want to sit in front of the computer, start to write. Some of you probably have this ability, but others, they need to start to discuss, how am I gonna write this? What is important to have that introduction? Okay, why this deforestation is important? How are we gonna connect and show society this is important? What I can associate with deforestation? Can you want to give me some ideas for my introduction here? That's my topic, deforestation in the Amazon. Why this is important for society. Come on, guys. Oh, excellent. That's the first thing that I can tell and write my introduction. What else? What else, guys? Yeah. Air quality. I can approach it in terms of air quality. And why she's saying that? Because probably a couple months ago, it wasn't every news that deforestation in the Amazon had burned a bunch of hectares and all the pollution going to the cities, right? That's the way I would approach it. What else? Yeah. There is only a limited amount of the rainforest. What else? Changing precipitation, microclimate, affect microclimate. What else? Now comes why this is important. What I want to do. No, I just want to I was describing the problems that deforestation can bring, right? But now I'm gonna tell you what you want to do. How am I gonna approach this? I can tell, Sensei. So I want, in my research paper, explain which factors are driving deforestation in the Amazon, right? Look at here, I told you a problem that that is deforestation and the consequences of deforestation, and I have an interest to tell you what's driving deforestation in the Amazon. Did you see the sequence here? How I convinced the importance of the problem? For one topic, we saw a bunch of problems associated with that topic, and I'm telling you what I'm gonna do. And people are going to say, well, Marcellus, everybody has done this type of thing about them. It's yes. But people have explained deforestation in the perspective of small farmers. I'm going to do that in the perspective of large farmers, interviewing large farmers and say, what's the difference? It's for small farmers you can find everywhere in the Amazon, and they're going to talk to you. Large farmers, they don't want to talk to you. You need to convince them, and nobody have done this before. It's new. You see the difference? How I frame my introduction to sell the paper. So this is very, very important. Okay. Zika. Why Zika is a hot topic? Why this? It's a hot topic. How many of you know it's a Zika? Yeah, why Zika is a hot topic? Huh? It was killing babies, right? Like babies born with a disease, deformity. What else? What else, guys? Is that the only problem? No, exactly. So you gotta think, so this is a hot topic, but how am I gonna approach that? How am I gonna tell people this is important for society? Okay, and look here, climate change. Why climate change is important? All the points that we discussed here needs to be described in the introduction, so that I can convince the review that thing is very important. Okay, so fire, the example of that we use here. We started with deforestation and went to fire. Why that's important? Health problems. Now, a lot of smoke. Look at the amount of money that society was wasting, when they had all the airplanes, grounded because they couldn't fly. People losing money, thousands of monies in this thing. So a good idea is a compelling subject. It's a hot topic, but it's just the topic, okay? So another example here, can data be a research paper? Yes, of course. Okay, data can be used as research paper, but we need to put that data into perspective. The example that I gave here about small farmers versus large farmers. If you go to the literature, you're gonna see thousands of papers about small farmers. You're not gonna find many about large farmers. And why is that? Especially in tropical countries, because they have been accused of being responsible for deforestation. They don't want to talk to you. So if you have a paper that has interviews with large farmers, they're gonna pay attention to see what the large farmers are telling, what they are doing, which land use decisions they are doing. And they need to put that data, information into perspective. Let me give you an example here, okay? Let's suppose that Dong is my PhD student there. He wrote a paper, that's that guy over there. Yeah. He wrote a paper where he was talking about interview with farmers. Now, and he had 5 interviews. He wrote the paper. And I go write another paper, okay? And he wrote in his paper there, oh, I interviewed 10 guys, okay? And I write another paper, and I wrote in my introduction there, saying that my interview is gonna contribute to the society because I'm interviewing, I'm showing twice the amount of interviewed, twice the amount of people that Dong interviewed. So how many he did? How many they did? 10, right? I did twice that amount. It's just 20. But I didn't tell you guys that's 20, right? Look, I use twice the amount he interviewed. Looks like that's much more, but it's not. But it's the way of right to convince the editor. I can add more for that. There's 20 people that I interview. I had 20 CEOs that are responsible for the biggest companies in the world. What do you think? Do you think that they're gonna accept my paper? It's probably gonna take a look at my paper. And why? It's not easy to interview CEOs of big companies, okay? But the way you're gonna express this, you're gonna convince the review that that amount of information, if that people that you are interviewing, it's very important to see how they think. Is that clear, guys? Look here, we are just thinking in terms of how am I going to express some things in the paper, okay? So look at this Zika here. Go back now, it's showing the importance of this. This paper was published in one of the important journals. So that's the Environment Research in Public Health about Zika. Why do you think that this paper was published? The first thing, Zika was new, right? It was affecting society. But what else? Don't read. That's why I put it very small. So I don't want you to read. I want you to think. Come on, guys. This work for everyone, work in different fields. Future implication, that's a good one, Roberta. What else? Why future implications? What else, guys? Some of you gave an idea already in terms of the disease, but what else is important here? Who is the biology field here? Who is? Huh? Nature of the disease. Yeah, you can go explore the area. But there are other things that are very important that you need to think. How many times we saw Zika before the appearance in Brazil? Never. Okay, that's the first one. What's the second one? The amount of people, okay, they had the disease. The amount of cases, okay, they had huge amount of cases that they could look at and say, hey, that's the first time, look at the amount of people infected. Now, and people start saying, yeah, look at now the coronavirus. Okay, look at the amount of people, the conditions that the disease appeared, which type of country? Developing country, okay? And after putting all this information together, they say, what's the implication of this for society if this disease is spread for other countries? How are we gonna handle this problem? That's why this paper was published, because they had the data, they have the conditions where the disease appeared, and they could tell other countries what they did to fix the problem, or at least minimize the problem. What are the characteristics of the disease and the implication for it? That's why this paper was published. Okay, they described, in many countries that had similar conditions, start to pay attention to this. Hey, we gotta take care of this if we don't want that disease here. Is that clear, guys? That's why this paper was published in this journal. So we had the new data. It was a discovery, a new disease, very important for the scientific community. So society was concerned, and you can write, that people are gonna do the same about the coronavirus. You're gonna find this in probably a couple months, papers in Science or Nature or whatever the good journal that they have about the conditions that the virus spread. Because it's new. Society is concerned about that. That's what makes a good paper then. The data, methodology. Can methodology be a good research paper? Yes, of course. Okay. So Carla over there wrote a paper doing the experiment, and she used a methodology. However, the methodology that she used costed, I put that, $1 million. I'm doing the same thing that Carla did with a new methodology that's gonna cost $20,000. Look at that. Is that important for society? Of course. Instead of spending $1 million, we're gonna spend $20 million or $20,000 to solve the same problem. Because my methodology is much better than the one that she's using, okay? So it's gonna depend how this methodology is gonna fill the gap in the literature. And here, look at the expression that I'm using, filling a gap. Okay, it's very, very important that you pay attention for that expression, because a lot of authors, they write that expression to call the attention of the review, okay? That you are filling a gap in the literature. Any problem with my accent, guys? No? Good. Here's a good example of that. Now, these are the two types of research. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the first one, operational framework to define multi-force degradation. And this guy had developed a new methodology where he could capture things that the old methodology couldn't. Okay, so the methodology that he was using in terms of remote sensing, it was more precise. Okay, he was showing that, well, Marcellus did this, but when he did that, he said that there were limitations for what he was doing. And I developed a new methodology that solves the problems of the limitation that he had. Okay, it's a new methodology. And so on. So you need to pay attention for these details in terms of how to write this paper. New methods, development of criteria, very important for scientific community. Things that we are missing, this new guy just solved the problem with a new methodology, okay? One thing that I want to call attention here is for the expression of novel. Never, never, never use that expression if you don't know if the things that you are developing is really new. Okay. If it's not new, don't use it. And why is that? Because the reviewers, they are experts in the field. If you write something saying that what I do is new, and he knows that it's not new, he's gonna trash your paper. Trash in some way. But he's gonna tell you that your paper is not novel, and you didn't do a good literature review, and this is why he suggests to reject your paper. Okay? Is that clear? So how do I know that the thing that I'm doing is novel? When I do a very good literature review. That people think that this is so boring to keep reading these things. There are so many papers. I say, yeah, there are. But it's very, very important. Now, when you know a lot about that subject, it's going to help you, even your discussion, even your results, because you know what's going on. And my students say, oh, man, this is so difficult. And I tell them, there's a way they say, you're going to be a doctor, a PhD in the future. No, you should be able to know what's going on in your field. So literature review help you, so try to find papers every day, and it's going to help you to solve some problems. The other expression, first time, first ever, these are our expressions that we use a lot in the papers, okay? And we're going to see some example of this here. One thing that people don't pay much attention is the journal that I'm writing for. You gotta pay attention with journals, because the journals, they have some aims, they have some scopes that I need to pay attention, because that's gonna tell me the way I'm gonna organize the paper. Okay, sometimes I write a paper for one journal, I cannot get that paper. It tries to send to Science. Science is not gonna accept that. It's why not? Well, Science asks for 5 pages, 6 pages, 7 pages, and your paper has 25 pages. So I'm not gonna just submit, they're gonna reject, they're not gonna even read. So look the scope where you wanna write so that you know exactly how you're gonna approach to organize your paper. See, these are all things that people don't pay attention and write the paper. Before you waste all the time, you gotta pay attention for these things, so they're gonna help you to frame the paper for the journals that you want. Okay, keep this in mind. Okay, who is the audience of your paper? So here are some examples of journals. Now you click in some journal, you're gonna see all these examples there. So they have the scope. Some they are much more detailed. In terms of what they see as important here. Now look at the overview. Other journals, they just bring some topics there. And you need to go through the papers to look at the structure of the paper before you write the paper. Now, this is another journal here. All the journals, they bring this information for you and tell you which type of paper they are accepting for publication. Some journals, they are very empirical. Some journals, they are very theoretical. Okay, and you need to pay attention for this thing before submitting the paper. A big dilemma that you see when you are a new faculty, and I want to pass this information for the ones that are going to become professors in the future, where I should publish. Because selecting the paper, selecting the journal, it's very important. Some departments, you're gonna have a meeting with you, some departments heads gonna have a meeting with you, you're gonna tell you, I want you to publish in your own field. If you are for agronomy, I want to publish in the journals of agronomy because it's gonna help you with your tenure. Okay? Others, you're gonna tell you, Yeah, Marcellus, I don't care much where you publish. But I expect that once in a while you publish in your field, in your journals, but keep publishing. Okay, and it's good, right? Today, for instance, NSF likes a lot of interdisciplinary work. And interdisciplinary papers, they not going for disciplinary journals. Do you understand that? Interdisciplinary papers usually go to interdisciplinary journals, disciplinary papers, disciplinary journals, okay? For instance, if I publish a paper in science, I guarantee my department head is not gonna say, no, 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 you're not gonna publish it there. It's science, right? So talk to them and see what they want you to publish, because this is gonna define exactly how you should approach your work. Writing the paper now. Let's start write the paper here, okay? So the first thing that we need to do, okay, is to convince the reviews that your work important. The example that we gave here about deforestation in the Amazon, it's very important. It's a hot topic. But it's not the topic that's important. It's the way I'm trying to convince you guys that what I'm writing, it's important. Okay, approach that. So I need to provide you, I'm writing for you guys, I need to provide you with enough background, enough information that you're gonna see that that paper is really important. And look at here, when I said, okay, let's talk about deforestation in Amazon. Why deforestation is important? And you guys came up with a bunch of things that I can put in the introduction of my paper to convince the reviewers that the thing is important. Okay, is that clear now? When we talk about deforestation, I'm gonna write about deforestation, and they'll say, well, deforestation in the world is increasing. 20 years ago, we had this amount of forest, tropical forest, and today we have this amount of tropical forest. Forests are decreasing in the whole world. And with the decrease of deforestation, it's impacting biodiversity. We start to see loss of the biodiversity. Okay, due to fragmentation, or due to increase in commodities production, and so on. I need to tell the story to show why that topic is important. I need to provide information for you so that you start to imagine what's going on that subject. How much information is good? And here comes a big problem for the students. It's amount of detail. How much detail I need to provide to the reader about that subject? There is one thing that's good to have in mind. One thing is to write a chapter of a dissertation that you can put it there, 7 to 10 pages of background information. But no paper is gonna accept more than 3 pages in the introduction. Okay, so you need to think in terms of which kind of information I need to put it there. That's really important to convince the person, to convince the reviewers about it. So how much detail? Okay, and I usually tell my students, write as much you can, and we're gonna come and start to cut. It's easy to cut than to add. Okay, we start to cut and say, oh, this is really important. So when you read in that introduction, say, okay, now I see the flow, it's easy, it's clear. Because when you write enough, you start to cut and just put in what you think is really important for that to convince the people about the importance of that problem then. So a good introduction is gonna answer your research question. So again, let's go back here for the example that I was using about the deforestation, climate change. Okay, we said that deforestation is a topic, and the problem was, in terms of loss of biodiversity, climate change, fire, and so on. My research is going to try to understand why microclimate are occurring in some specific regions of the Amazon. Change the microclimate occur in some specific region of the Amazon and not in other regions. So I tell them what I'm gonna do. What's my research question? Okay, I tell the problem that deforestation causing, and I tell that I have interest in to look at this problem here, or I have the interest to understand why or how large farmers are affecting deforestation in the Amazon, and what are the consequences for loss of biodiversity. So tell your story, but tell what you're gonna do, because that's what we have interest in. So I'm gonna share this with you guys, okay? This slide, so you guys can use that. The other thing that's very, very important, and a few people write that. Who has interest in the thing that I'm developing? Who is gonna benefit from my research? Well, if I'm right about deforestation in the Amazon, I guarantee the land use scientists, you're gonna have interest in learn about what I'm doing. Okay, if you want to talk about loss of biodiversity, I guarantee that ecologists are going to have interest in that. I need to tell the reviewers who has interest, which part of society has interest. If I talk about Zika, I tell them that's going to benefit all the scientists in tropical disease, for instance. Okay, don't forget to tell, because this is very important to convince them. So one thing that we can notice in many of these papers is that they use some expression in the introduction to call attention for that specific problem, and how you're gonna approach that problem. We're gonna give you some examples here in a few minutes, but these are a common expression that we find. However, deforestation in the Amazon have been studied for more than 50 years. However, the way that these people are look at the problem, just consider the way the small farmer use the land. My work, you're gonna look at this problem in the perspective of large farmers. See? How I put the however there to show what people are doing and how I'm gonna do to call attention for that. The other one remains unclear. Now, that's another one that's very, we see it. People are doing some type of work in deforestation, but we still don't understand, remains unclear, why people deforest. Why they do that? If everybody agrees that we lose biodiversity, that's a fight, affects climate change, that's cause fire, why people keep doing that? And you can say, it remains unclear. And my work, we're gonna try to understand how these people work. Okay, look at here, so let's put, I love Criminal Minds, that show. And I like to see that show and say, that's why these people do this. Okay. Nobody could answer yet. Why they kill other people the way they kill? It remains unclear. Okay, psychiatrists, psychologists, they are trying to understand the way people think. So that expression is call attention for the review for the importance of that thing that you are doing. The other expression that I like and see, there is a gap in the literature. Okay, you were doing all the literature review and say, I couldn't find anything. There is a gap in the literature. Is that good or bad? Is that good or bad? Well, man, I was doing research, in the literature. I couldn't find anything. How am I going to cite this? How am I going to cite this? Say that my work is important. And that's come the imagination of who is writing. Now, you gotta show the reviewers that although this subject looks interesting, nobody so far have done this type of work. It's very difficult to find papers in the literature to cite. Your work is the first novel work to develop this type of work. That's why it's important. And sometimes you write like the way I'm saying. Is that clear? Isn't that clear the way I'm saying? Yeah. Okay, I'm not going around, try to convince. I'm being clear. No, in terms of, that's the way you should be in some papers, okay? Besides, that's another expression to show what was done and what you are doing. Okay, call attention for your work. The other expression, lag of knowledge. It's like lag in literature. Although some people have done this experiment is so costly. By new methodology, you're gonna advance the science, is gonna fill a gap in literature. Okay, you gotta be, use this expression to call attention for the reviews all the time. Okay, let's move on here. Let's go through a few examples here in the literature, some papers. Okay, we got a few here, put it here, and you can look at in your own field and look for this expression in your own field. I guarantee they exist. This is a paper that was published, the Annals of the Association of American Geography. It's one of the best papers or journals. And you're gonna see that the expression that she used here, it's very interesting. It talks exactly about, she's talking about conflict. Well, conflict exists everywhere, okay? Now, if you look at, she's talking about deforestation, but she talks about conflict. And what she does is she used the expression, although episodes of conflict over land are common, okay? They are common. Look here, here in the Middle West, when the people were coming here, the colonies, we had a lot of conflicts with Native Americans. We have a lot of conflict with them. They are common. And what she does, say it's common in the Brazilian Amazon, she says that she's gonna approach, one type of conflict that people are not pay attention. She's filling a gap in the literature. Okay. So I'm just going through a few things here. This paper considered the plight of rural landless. So I said, well, conflict is common. We see a lot of conflict everywhere, but there is one type of conflict that we are not paying attention. That's conflict for land as a consequence of the landless movement in Brazil. Landless movement are occupying farmers, large farmers in Brazil, and the farmers are reacting to that by killing small farmers or landless people. That's the way she sold the paper in the introduction. Show the importance. So my paper is going to describe this process of conflict for land in the Amazon. Okay, that's what her paper does. I will provide you, look at here, to provide a comprehensive understanding of land struggle. That's what she's doing for us. And look at the structure. She was talking about the importance of conflict, but conflict is not new. Okay, but there is a gap in the literature because people are talking about other type of conflict. The type of conflict that I'm gonna talk is about small farms being killed by large farmers in the Amazon. And I wanna provide one understand why these things happening in the Amazon. Okay, this is another one. This is another paper here. We're gonna go different papers here, okay? This is another one, and this paper here was Professor Gibbs. Now, she's from University of Wisconsin Center for Land Use. And why this paper is interesting, why this paper was published? It's in Portuguese, okay? But it was published in Portuguese in one of the best journals in the West, the Conservation Letters, okay? So what she did is say, well, a lot of people are talking about deforestation everywhere. People are interviewing farmers, people are interviewing large farmers. My work goes in another line of research. I'm interviewing the slaughterhouses, the people that own the slaughterhouse. And why this is important? Nobody did this before. And they are the one that buying the cattle that's causing deforestation in the Amazon. And so she published this journal, this paper in a good journal, because she explained why the slaughterhouse are buying that type of cattle, where the cattle is coming from, and how farmers are faking, because there are laws saying that you cannot buy cattle for deforested areas. And how the slaughterhouse people, they only say, well, they faked it, and we don't know, because the paperwork looks fine. So she published this paper there showing why this thing is important. And she used the expression here, novel, okay? That expression, the first study, she wrote in Portuguese, this is the first study, it's novel, nobody did this before. Okay, that's why it's important. This is another one here. Talk about frontier expansion and migration. So this guy was trying to explain, migration is another topic, right? It's very common. People move to everywhere. And this guy say, well, but the type of migration that I'm gonna talk here, nobody pay attention to this before. I'm gonna talk about the kids of farmers that became adult and they moved deep in the forest to open land. And he explained the type of migration that nobody paid attention. This is a journal in philosophy, demography. Okay, he convinced the reviewers that, yeah, we never saw this type of migration. And he explained this migration as life cycle, household life cycle, where kids grow, they need land, and they go deep in the forest. Okay, they migrate deep in the forest to open land in the forest. So this is one interesting, and as a consequence of this direct actual land reform, they call DALA. Look at this other paper here. This is about global warming. Okay, if you look at this paper here, the title, Assessment of Global Warming Impacts on Water Resource in Ecology. Okay, if you read this paper here, if you read the introduction there, you're gonna see that however is there. So all the papers that I was showing that, the however is there. This one also has a however. And look at here what he wrote in there. He put it there, global warming would cause serious problems to sustainability of our society. And we everybody agree with that, right? Nothing new in global warming there. With the development of general circulation models, geographic information systems, the assessment of global warming impacts on river basin environment is possible. Yeah, we agree that's possible. But what he does here, he's tell what's going on in the literature and how people use this to study global. However, the investigation of global warming impacts on water resources and rivers ecology lags the requirement of evaluate socio-economic sustainability. And see the expression of lags in however. Okay. He's calling attention here. No. Well, people have done this. However, remains unclear. Lags. Okay, nobody pay attention to this. And he tells what he's gonna do. Is that clear? Look at the expression, common expression that people use all the time. And you gotta learn how to use this expression there, okay? This is another paper here, right? And here, look at the however there. So people are doing, look at here. These are all citations, what people have been doing or have done. However, still unclear or lags in the literature, this type of problem that I'm approaching. And reviewers, now they pay attention for these things because these are expressions that call attention for them. Okay. However, look at here, another expression. Although some studies, all these studies before have done this, still remains unclear. Okay? It's clear, guys? Here's another paper. Okay. Look here, this ladder uses spatial regression modeling to provide first statistical assessment. Look at that. The guy makes sure that he telling the editor in the review, this is the first statistical assessment of this problem. Nobody have done this before. I'm the first one to do this calculation. And as a reviewer, I'm going to say, yeah, let me read this to see how he did that. Caught my attention, right? This is the first time that somebody did this calculation, this statistical analysis. I'm going to pay attention for that. And that paper was published, the Environmental Research Letters. People that are from the environment here, Environment Research Letter is one of the top 10 journals in that field. Okay. There's another one here. However, little is known about the role of non-physical inputs. Look at the expression again. So these expressions are very, very important in the introduction to convince the reviews, to convince the editor that you are doing something new. Okay. And here, it's what I like about this introduction here, and that this guy here, this author here, he wrote, however, despite this criticism, he was showing off. Say, yeah, people are gonna tell me, but they did this before. Yes, they did. And although there are criticisms for use these things, what I'm doing here, it's new. Because I developed a new methodology here to do this type of things and, you know, end of the criticisms. Okay. Here, another example here. Okay. Although many change detection techniques have been developed, look here. What I'm showing to the editor, to the review, that I know what the people are doing. They say, I know the literature have done this before. However, okay, no single method is optimal. Okay, no single method is optimal. I'm in development here a new methodology that's going to give 95% accuracy. And I'm going to pay attention to that. And look at here. See, if you, he wrote this thing here in this introduction is basically one page, but it's so clear what people have done and what he's doing that I want to read the whole paper for that. It's not the amount of information that's going to convince the editor of the reviews. It's the way you write to show the importance of that topic. Okay. This is another paper here where you're going to see, however, again, look at it. However, there is evidence that suggests that slide Wi-Fi are increasing Great Plains. And I want to understand why they are increasing the Great Plains. So if you look at wildfires are a hot topic, right? Is that right? Is it a hot topic or not? Yeah, it was in the news all the time. Look at what happened in Australia. No, last month. No, this made all the wine industry in some locations in Australia. Wildfire in California. Wildfire in Great Plains. The indigenous Native Americans are using fire for long, but why you are seeing now more and more wildfires? I want to understand what's going on with wildfire. So they convince the guy that it's important. Okay, not the one thing that I want to call attention that this type of approach is not only in social science. We find this expression in other fields. So if you look here, okay. However, our ER design showed that covariance or covariate affect to be predictive. You gotta use the expression in any field. Okay, so the guy here is using statistics that, you know, to show what was the problem for that. Oh. So here's, look here. a new type, not a model, that he seems going to solve that problem. So the idea is to describe the problem and tell how you're going to solve that problem, which approach you are using to solve that problem. That's another example here for water quality, groundwater. Where he wants to use WIQ to look at, to see, it's a new methodology to see if the water is really contaminated. Okay. That's another example here in chemistry. Okay. Look at here, the spread is still not completely understood. You gotta tell the reviews about this. And they're gonna agree with you. Yeah, he's right. Some people are doing this and we still don't understand. And he's gonna explain why not, what's different. So this is in chemistry. This is another expression here. That's in physics. Okay, look here. This density function theory here, he explained, see what other people are doing and contributions that he's doing for this new thing here. This part he tells that, however, this thing here is missing. And my contributions is to solve this problem in physics. This is another one here, and this one here, it's in biology. Look at the expression there. Regrettably, there is no primary therapy for this disorder. And I'm presenting here a new type of therapy that's gonna be the first step in fixing this problem. Okay? So these expressions are very, very important to learn. I have a list of expressions that I like to use depending on the paper. And I play, say, which one would look better? You're gonna call more attention to the people that are reading that. Okay. Literature review. So we move from the describe the problem to the literature review. Okay. In the literature review, nothing more than explain where we are in that problem. That's going to help me to convince the reviewers that I'm in the top of a good subject. That's the things that I'm doing, it's new. And the idea here, is that every journal is going to have some structure, organization, that you need to follow. You cannot apply the same format for every journal. So you need to go to that journal and look at what's the structure of the papers that they are accepting there. Some journals, they're going to ask you, well, we would like to see a very strong section in literature review. Other papers say, we don't care. And since they don't care, I need to think, well, how much is going to cost me to publish in that journal? If you have a 25-page, 30 pages, is that worth to put a 4 more page there, 5 page? Can I put the literature review in the introduction of the description? So the way you're going to organize the paper, you're going to dictate how you're going to do this. Okay, you need to think in terms of how am I going to organize the paper before I do my literature review. And that's the call that I have here. For some fields, in social science, for instance, the literature review is much bigger than in the empirical science or STEM. Okay, that's clear when you look at, so you try to read papers in psychology, social work, history, literature review is pretty big compared to what you see in other fields. Okay, so pay attention, where you're gonna publish for that. And here's a good example of that. If you look at this paper here, the whole paper doesn't have a section on literature review. But he's doing a literature review because he put it there, deforestation research. So he's explaining what happened, what people are doing in this field. Who are these people? It's not big, but he's telling. And he used some expression, when very interesting this, he used the expression, since the seminal work of Caldas. What he's doing? Since the seminal work of Caldas in 1955. What are we doing? He just answers, well, since that first original paper in that field in 1955, people are doing this. Okay, now it's time to move for another line of thought. And here I present an alternative for what Caldas did in 55. I did a literature review, right? When I told him, well, the first guy was this guy in 1955, and people were doing this until today, and I cite there, okay, I cite there how many people have done. If I put this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, among others. I don't need to put everyone there. Okay, because I told them, this is a very old problem since 1955, and they are doing this. Is that clear? So the way you write, that's the things that I want to, you gotta think, how are you gonna express that thing to facilitate your work, to help you with your work, okay? Let's see another example here. Look at here, this example here. Now look at all these light white colors here. These are all literature review. No section literature review. When you write a dissertation, some fields, we have a chapter. How many of you saw this before? A chapter just literature review. In papers, we don't do this. You can, but you're gonna need to be concise because it's not gonna spend 5 pages in your paper, just talk about literature review. If you're gonna write a proposal for NSF, you're not gonna write more than 1 page in literature review for the whole proposal. You have 15 pages to write the proposal, not gonna waste your time. 1 page just in literature review. You're gonna put the literature in many of the sections there to show that you know the subject. That's another example here. And here I wanna call attention for something very interesting. Some social science papers, they require conceptual framework. We usually use this thing here when we're writing proposals to show the review, what's the conceptual framework that they are using to explain nature and society relationship. How, for instance, a disease affects some type of plants, how these plants affect the way farming plants, how the farmer sells to the market, and so on. And you show this conceptual framework, connect everything, and say, we're gonna look at this part of this system. And I'm reading that, oh, I know what they are doing. It's very interesting. They're gonna look at one part of the system that nobody pay attention for that. So that's another way to put this. He convinced people, he use conceptual framework. Others, they spend a lot of time in talk about the statistical model. So you have the conceptual framework and you say, here, how am I gonna measure that? The conceptual framework help you to develop the variables, explain the variables of the system that you are studying. And say, I'm concerned about this part of the system, and here are the variables that I'm gonna use, and here how I'm gonna measure that thing, the empirical part. Some people that work in STEM, chemistry for instance, they know what kind of process they're gonna develop, and they describe step by step how we're gonna do it. And we're gonna see some examples here. In people in social science, they need to explain first how society behave before they tell which variables they are selecting from that thing. Okay? So from different fields, you're gonna see different ways to do it. But this is exactly what you need to do, you see, how people do this type of thing in our field, in my field. We are teaching a class now with 2 other professors about field work, going to the field with students. Now, in how to collect data from the field, how to transform that data in variables. But before having the variables, okay, I need to think how the system works. And we discussed how the system works. Okay, here's the way the system works. How are we gonna measure that? Which variables we're gonna measure? How I can write a questionnaire that I can get the variables from the questionnaire to measure. Okay, these are the things that we need to think all the time when writing a paper, because we're gonna need to explain. Research papers, they need to be what? Reproduced, especially people that are in the STEM field. Okay, and say, here's the way we did, because other people are gonna go there, gonna try to replicate what we did. If you don't explain, how do you develop that variable? How to calculate that thing? They cannot reproduce. In social science, this is also important, because what's applied to some society can apply to the other. Look at the case of the Zika here that we're talking about. When the guys are describing how Zika appeared, what Zika is causing, people are gonna read that, and, hey, this is applied to us too. Look here what they did. So it's very important to pay attention for these details in many different fields, okay? This is another example here. And comes for the question of methodology. That's exactly what you're talking about here now. So describe the problem, which concepts we are using, why. Okay, if we are doing experiment in chemistry to solve, to develop a new drug, first thing that you're gonna do is say, why am I studying that drug? Why that drug is important for society? Which type of drug exists? Okay. Why my drug is going to be better than the other drug from the other company there? Is it the cost? Is it the side effect that my drug is developed that's better than the side effect, if the side effect is better or not, than the other one? So why this is important? So I need to describe these things to convince people. No. And look here, we need to be able to reproduce the experiment. If you're not able to produce, and why we do that? There are so many cases of fake experiments. People forging data. Okay? And the expert gonna look at that information as, this thing is suspicious here. It's too perfect. Now look here, 99%, no side effect, no things. Well, let's do this thing here to see if it is work. So you need to pay attention. In the famous doctor once in Japan, and it was in big trouble. Guy published a lot, but he was faking all the data. So all journals that published this paper had to go being published and say, well, we apologize, but because of this problem, blah, 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 blah. So data needs to be replicated. Here, a good example of that. In here, this journal in chemistry. No, this one's in biology. Look here, material and methods. Look here, what chemical they use in that, which type of experiment they did. Look at the preparation standards. So everything here can be redone. Okay? That's one of the things that's important. We need to describe so that people can read that clearly. People from the field, of course, not me. If I'm going to read that, say, damn it, I cannot do anything. Because I'm not the field, but people in the field are going to read that. And for them, the way she was talking, oh, we just be clear, flow. That's what they're going to see there. And they show how they can measure that, which type of analysis they did. Okay, methodology, it's to help people to replicate your work. And doing this, other people can say, well, but there are some limitations there. In my work, it got advanced, the work done by this person here, because my work, it doesn't have this limitation that they have. The method that I developed is much better now. I'm using a supercomputer that she didn't have when she did that analysis. Or I'm developing a new statistical model here that's gonna help me to separate the problems that she had. And here the literature review helped me to understand what people have done and what I'm doing now. That's much better. Data analysis. The idea of bad data, good data. Now, today, everybody is one of the big ideas of NSF is big data. Why we are so concerned about big data? Because we are producing too much data. Okay, and we don't use 10% of the data that we generate. Okay, that's one of the things that's very important to pay attention. People that do field work, we prepare questionnaires of 30 pages. We don't use 15, 20% of the questionnaire. And we have that bunch of information. So that's one of the things. Bad data and good data, it's always gonna depend the way you're gonna present the data. And the example that I gave you, if you're writing my paper, well, I did a field work and I interviewed 5 people. These 5 key informants and gave me this type of information. Look at the way I wrote. Is that appealing? If you are a reviewer, do you think that's going to be appealing? You say, what I told you, it's a 5 key informant interview that gave me information about their decisions in marketing. What do you think? Is that appealing? Probably not. But if I write the way, well, my research interviewed 5 CEOs of the big agricultural companies in the United States. Look at the way I frame the 5. Okay, from 5 with no information to bad data type, I made that it looks like much better, like a good data. It's still the same 5 people. But the way I presented, in putting information, why these people are important, make a big difference. Transform the 5 data in 5 guys that dominate the market. And I can tell these 5 people, they represent 95% of commodity market in the United States. The guys said, damn, that's huge, right? Just because I said 95% of the commodity market that I haven't done before. So you gotta pay attention in writing. No, you gotta, don't be shy in writing. You gotta show how important is your work. If that's the way you present it. If I tell you guys, well, his experiment here had 5 repetitions. My experiment is twice the amount of experiment that he did. His experiment cost $20 million. My experiment is twice that. It costs just $1 million. See the difference? So we need to show why this information is important. No, bad data and good data, no, it depends on how we're going to present that, how we're going to write. I'm not telling you that you need to inflate your thing. I'm telling you to show what your data can give to the society, for the reviewer, to the reviewers. Okay? Data area variables. Some papers are going to ask you to describe, like we described before the chemists here, how they did. Some journal in social science also ask the same. And here, that's use some materials here to describe the type of variables that they're going to use and why this thing is important for the models that they are developing. Okay, and again, everything's going to depend the structure of the journal and how you organize your paper. Okay, I like to hit the same key because this is very important. Okay, it's very, very important to pay who I'm writing for, who are these people that are going to read my paper. Another thing that people don't pay much attention, but as a reviewer, we pay a lot of attention for that, is the way you present your information. Now, we have been receiving proposals or papers with bad figures, bad tables. That's difficult to understand. Sometimes the legend or the source or something is too small to read. The colors don't match. Okay, it's difficult to read the map. So reviewers, they pay attention for that. A good map, a good figure, a good table can let people understand exactly what you are doing. Okay, so don't neglect this type of thing, because the reviews, what they're looking for, they're looking things for reviews, professor reviews, they have a big error. Okay, so you like to write to the editor, see, I'm good in find mistakes in this paper. Look at the amount of mistake. Every time that you have a typo, you're gonna put it there. Typo, page, number tal, line tal. They try to show that they can do a good work. So your work is trying to minimize the amount of mistake that he can highlight in your paper. And this amount of mistake gonna be a big difference between minor correction and major corrections in the paper, okay? So that's what you want. So you want to avoid then to be criticize your paper all the time. No, this guy don't pay attention to the figure. Look at the table just doing, look at this thing here, it's missing this, it's missing that. So instead of figure 1, you put a figure 5 doesn't exist. So we gotta pay attention for these things. That's very, very important for that. Now, this is a good example. Figures, you gotta use the figures to show that you understand what you're doing, to help people to understand what the process that you are doing. If I'm in the field of biology, for instance, or medicine, if you look at the chemistry, look at that thing there, you say, oh, it looks clear, I can understand very well what he's doing. Figures are to help people to understand the problem, to help to understand what are we doing. And you gotta make use of that when you can, okay? We're gonna jump, we already talk about this description of data and measurements. This is a good example of this person here published this paper in an excellent journal where he shows the transition of forest to deforestation and how he develops his variables. Now, and reading the paper and going to the figure here, I could see exactly what he's doing. Now, in the comments for the editors was very good to say, oh, that was great. So I couldn't understand very well what you are doing because of the figures. Help me to see what I could not imagine. Now, he was imagining something when he saw the figure, he said, oh, now it's clear for me what he's doing. So figures can help you a lot for that. Like in chemistry or physics, social scientists, they also need to describe how the data was processed if they are doing field work. Okay, some journal are gonna ask you, well, you gotta describe how you collect the data. If you went to the field to interview farmers, you gotta tell me how many farmers you interviewed, where they live, are they homogeneous? If you are to interview just 30 farmers, are these 30 farmers representative of the population? How did you process this information? How do you calculate that variable? So it needs to be clear in social science, like in the other field there. So description, and look at the way he put it that. He didn't spend much time. And why is that? Because he said the detailed description of the field data collection can be found in this guy here, and this guy here. I'm not going to waste it. Just publish that. If you want to interested in how I did, he is here, how I collected. I'm presenting here just another part that's coming from that data, okay? Results, the findings. Here it's very interesting because it's easy for some students to write the results, but it's very difficult for some students to discuss the results. Okay, and that's one of the things that the literature review can help you a lot. Okay, I can do an experiment. I can look at the statistics of the experiment. I can describe the findings of that experiment. But sometimes we struggle, especially in social science, to describe why we have that type of result. In agronomy, for instance, if I'm using fertilizer, I have many different rows with deep applications in potassium, nitrogen. I can tell, right, how the yield in many different of that experiments. I describe the results. Okay, but in social science, the discussion is a little bit more complex. Okay, and that's one of the things that we need to pay attention for that. Here's a good example of that. The results of this paper here, where the person put the objective in the top, describe what happened, put a figure there to show the results, and move to the next objective. So I'm describing my findings for every objective. So what I'm doing here, I'm helping the reviewer understand step by step. If my paper had 4 objectives, when my results say for the first objective, I want to do this. Here are what I found. Here are the figures explaining. And I go to the second objective and do the same. I'm just showing the results, the findings. Okay? The same paper here comes to the parts that people struggle. That's discussion of the results. Why my results are this way and not from that way? Okay? Why? Limitation in softwares, limitation in the experiment. The samples that I use are not the correct one, so I need to tell people and discuss that thing. Okay, for instance, why my results for yield and wheat didn't work the way I was expecting? Well, one of the big problems that I had, too much rain. Okay, and I tell that, so this time of the year, we expect this amount of rain, and they explain what's the supposed weather for this type of the year. With excess of rain, that's all the things that we found. Okay, or a new disease as a consequence of the rain. So we need to discuss why the results are that way. Right? Some papers, they don't even ask for results or for discussion. The guy gives the results, he go to the conclusions, like this one here. Other papers, they put it all together. Okay, let me show you here, results and discussion. And I tell my students, when you struggle to write the discussion, you have the result, and you struggle to write the discussion, put it together. Results and discussion. And from there, you start to write. If you see that you have enough and you can separate, you separate. But look at where you want to publish. If they accept result of discussion together, do the easiest way. Okay? And I see people struggling all the time. Oh, but that paper journal has won this result here, and this thing that. So look at to see if there are other papers there that have results in discussion together. If they have, try to do this way. You see if it looks better. Okay, so that are things that I want to call attention for you for this type of things that are very important. Make sure that you talk about the hypothesis. If you have a hypothesis, make sure that what's the hypothesis are telling you. Are you accepting or rejecting the hypothesis? And why you are rejecting? Which factors are affecting that thing? And the other thing that people forget a lot is, this is a hypothesis, is the question of the limitations. What are the limitations of your experiment? Let's suppose that you were supposed to do experiment for 30 days. You couldn't do for 30 days because of the rain. Okay. You couldn't do the amount of, apply the amount of nitrogen or fertilizer or pesticide. Or you couldn't travel more than 3 hours to collect your data. So we have to decrease the range or buffer area that you would search. You got to tell which limitations. When you do that, what you are doing? You are anticipate the reviews, to put in that in the review that your work has limitation, and you didn't call attention for the limitation. Is the amount of farmers enough for that type of work? If it's not, which kind of limitation? What are the consequences of that for the results? Or for that for the experiment? Let's suppose that you are doing an experiment with mice, and you have 50 mice, and suddenly someone disease came and you killed 10% of the mice. How that affect your experiment? Is there a limitation? If the results, even with that thing, it's not a limitation. That if we have this problem dying, in the analysis, our results are still good enough. So you need to tell and convince this work is good, it's worth to do. I was showing some examples of maps and graphs that are very good. So we already talked about this here. Another problem that we see a lot, discussion is not a summary of the results. I will see this all the time. Okay, so you gotta be critical in your discussion. And sometimes you read the results and go to the discussion, it's just kind of repetition what was done before. Okay, it's not. That's why I tell, if you don't know much, do another literature review. And I tell my students, go read the paper, look at how people write the discussion, how they approach the problem. So that's the way you learn. Now, I'm not asking you to copy and paste, but to learn how people write this thing. Okay, it's very, very important. And for me, the part that's more important is think critically about the things that you are working. Okay. Well, we talked a little bit already about the limitations. No, that's very important. Pay attention for this in your PhD dissertation. People are going to ask you. That's the question that any advisor or committee members asking. What are the limitations of your work? So how you can overcome, how you did overcome the limitation of your work? That could be the first question they would ask. So I know that you are doing this, blah, blah, blah. So what are the limitations of your work? They're going to ask you this. I guarantee they're going to ask you this type of thing. Okay, and you need to put in the paper there. And here's a few examples of that. Look at here. He selected, look at here. He selected a way to do things. This was a broad sample. And he said, well, there is a block of pixelated spectral spatial deforestation pattern, result of strong regional effect. So he's describing what he was expecting to see and what he saw and why. He said, well, probably the type of image that I use is not appropriate for this type of problem. Okay, this is a limitation. Or the computer software that we have today cannot handle the amount of information that a satellite image generates. That's a big limitation. Okay. Let's move here. I want to go to things that I think that important. One thing that I want to call attention here is that when I ask you to think critically, you need to use what you have in your hands in terms of data, what the results are given to you. Sometimes you read things in the discussion that I call my students and say, where did you get this idea? I say, well, I was imagining. I say, no, stop there. No, I don't want you try to see things that don't exist in the data. Okay, that's one of the things that, now, you got to speculate. No, but you cannot develop and see things that is not there. Okay? So you gotta pay attention. This could be a consequence of this. However, I think that we need to do more experiment to confirm this type of thing. You see the way I put it? I'm not telling that that thing is happening. I said, this could be a consequence of this, and we need to investigate more, doing other types of things to make sure that this thing is a result of this. Okay? So these are very, very important, and people don't pay much attention for this type of thing. Conclusions. Conclusion here, this is also not a summary. You don't need to write. For dissertation, sometimes you can find the guy writing 4 or 5 pages of conclusion. That's fine. It's a dissertation chapter conclusion. But for a paper, you're gonna see that sometimes the conclusion is just a few paragraphs. Okay, look at here. There's a few paragraphs. What you found? What are the conclusions of that experiment? Did you reject or not? the hypothesis that you have, what you are suggesting to do in the future, okay? So it's very, very important. The other thing is that people always forget to put in the paper. It's acknowledgement. Let's suppose that I write a paper, okay, and I send to the editor with no acknowledgement of who funded me, okay? And the review, the editor is gonna read the paper. It's like, oh, this guy is looking at the problem of climate change in this location here. It's the same topic as everybody. But if I put in my paper there, I want to thank NASA for the grant of $5 million and number, blah, 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 blah. What do you think that review is going to do? I said, damn it, I got $5 million for NASA? No, to look at this climate change? Yeah, I'm going to read the abstract, see what he's doing, right? Look, a big difference between not putting the things there and putting that NASA was supporting me in that grant. NASA doesn't give you money to everyone, okay? So acknowledgement, it's very good to call attention for that type of thing. I got money for, I want to thank the Department of Defense, Department of Energy. This guy don't give you money easily. It's very competitive. I tell them that my work was very good. I want to thank you, the USDA, for the $50 million. That is, damn, $50 million? Okay, so pay attention for this. People always forget to put it. Look at here, the description of this thing here. This guy here, he had 2 grants. Now, one for the National Science Foundation, and another one also for National Geographic Society. 2 grants helping them with that research there. So I want to look, I want to read what these guys are doing for that thing, okay? Reference, whoa, damn it. Today is the deadline that my advisor asked me to submit that paper. And he's gonna ask me tomorrow morning, 5 o'clock, submit the paper. Next day, the advisor said, did you submit the paper yesterday? I said, yeah, I did. I forgot 15 reference, but I did. That 15 reference is gonna come back in your face in 30 days. Because the review is gonna say, come on, man. So you don't know even how to cite? No, this is very, very important. They are looking for other things. Make sure that you know who is who in your field. And why is that? Because your paper is gonna go to one expert. And the expert in that field, the first thing he's gonna do, let's see if this guy had cited me here. Oh, he missed me. Oh, it's too bad. I'm the expert in this field. This guy doesn't know me. What the heck he's doing? Okay? It's very, very important to get these things right. And that is another mistake here. No, not the case of you guys now, but we always get this. When you become an expert in one field, you're going to receive papers in that field all the time. Now, I receive probably, I would say, 5, 6 paper months review in my field, a month. And you know who is who in your field. As soon as you start to read papers, you start to see, because you read the paper review later on tells if the paper was accepted or rejected. Thank you for doing your job. But you're gonna later on, you're gonna do, so hey, let me see what people are doing in this field, that journal. And you see, oh, I was the guy that reviewed that paper. It's, oh, this is the guy here. So I start to read that. What's gonna happen? You know the style of the person. You know what the person likes to talk about. And you know who's writing, submit the paper. Sometimes you read the papers and say, this paper coming from that guy, and you go there, you look at the reference, 15 papers from the same person. And the reviews, they're gonna go and take a look on that. Over citation for your own work. They know, they are expert in the field, okay? As soon as you become expert in your area, people are gonna read your work all the time. They wanna know what you are doing. What I'm missing in Carla's work that I should be doing now. She's working the same field that I work, what she's doing. So people, they pay attention for this detail, okay? So make sure that you don't do that. Big mistakes. We are almost done, guys. Biggest mistake. I haven't seen people writing paper, submitting the paper for one journal. The journal comes, reject that paper, and what they do? They resubmit the paper to another journal without doing the reviews that he was asked to do. And guess what? I reviewed for three different journals. You submit for this, I reject, and submit to the other journal that came exactly back to me, and they say, oh, the same paper. I'm not that. He didn't do what I asked. Reject again. So you are not a review of one journal. Sometimes you are reviewing for 10, 15 journals in that field. Okay? So make sure that when your paper is rejected, take that thing as a new start. Fix the problems. Okay? And submit a better paper. Sometimes the suggestions are so good that instead of sending back for one journal, I sent to a journal with a higher impact than the other one, the previous one. Because the corrections were so good that say, oh, I'm not going to waste this paper in this journal anymore. I'm going to send to this other one here. Because now it looks good. Okay, rejection is a new start. Okay, that's the way you should see it. Okay. There are many reasons for rejection. Okay, many reasons. We talk about some reasons here, but there are some ones where people don't pay attention on. Okay, papers limited interest. I mean, just talk about the watersheds in Kansas. Oh, what's the name of that famous watershed that we have here? I forgot the name. Quivira is one of the watersheds, something like that. I need to make sure that the local problem that I'm analyzing, it's a problem that I see everywhere. Okay? Do you understand what I'm saying? You need to transform that local problem in something important for the whole society. Say, well, this problem we can see here in this watershed, but it's very common in wherever you go. You sell that little problem to everywhere. So that people, okay, now I can see this case study that he used, but this is applicable to everywhere. Okay, and there are people that they cannot extrapolate this idea, and the paper becomes just one focus point. And the journal say, well, I'm not going to waste have this paper here because it's not going to call attention of anyone. It's okay paper, but he didn't explore much. So limited scope, okay? Paper is a routine of application. Sometimes people are just applying the same things, a new, for instance, so let's say land cover change. We have different models, okay, to analyze land cover change. And there's just one more application for a different location. What's new? Nothing. Okay, nothing. It's just another application. People have done this before. Why am I going to put this in the journal? Okay, so let's pay attention for this thing here. It's very important. Novel significance are not evident. When I was talking about hot topic, why that hot topic is important, why that thing is significant, it's not clear. You got to do a good job explaining the problem, why that problem with deforestation is important for the whole society. Okay. Failure to submit, to meet submission requirements. Good example of the I gave you for the science. Science requires maximum 8 pages. Okay, I'm sending 15 pages. Okay, and they just reject. It's like submitting proposal to NSF. Depends on what they call. They say the limit is 15 pages, the limit is 20 pages. When you try to submit, that thing bounces back. You are over the limit. Some journals, they accept, but they reject after it's over the limit. No requirement, no, doesn't attend the requirements for that. Incomplete coverage of literature. Unacceptable English. I tell my students, go and talk to people that can fix the English problem. I'm not the expert in the language. It's not my first language. I read, I can understand, but I always have someone to go through my English to make sure that looks good. Okay? In many journals, they have an editor there just to fix the problem with English. But they're gonna do that after your paper is acceptable, not before. Before, it's your job to do it. And I pay people to go through it. Hey, take a look, don't read this for me. Look here, I'm doing a lot of, I'm getting better now. No, before would come that bunch of for fix. Now, it's 10% maximum. It's getting better. Because I'm learning how to write this type of thing. So, and you guys can do the same. The process, it's a very interesting, the process for rejecting a paper. Now, so you submit the paper here, okay, is the author. This is going to the editor. The editor is gonna look at the base requirements, okay? The scope. If my journal in social science, and you are sending something in medicine for me, it's not gonna work, okay? I'll look at the scope of a paper, scope of the journal to see if it matches the requirement. If it matches the requirement, I send to the reviews. Go to the reviews. 3 reviews. Blind review. They don't know who you are, okay? And they're gonna review and gonna send recommendation to the editor. The editor is gonna compile that information, okay, for everyone. They're gonna look at who accept, who reject, minor revision, major revision, and he's gonna pass that information. He's gonna make the decision here. After reading everything, you're gonna make a decision. No, I accept with minor revisions. I accept with major revisions, or I reject. When I reject, I send this to you with all the information that you need to do to fix the problem. Okay, is that clear? That's the process. The thing here, the thing here is that receiving so many papers, you gotta pay attention for a few details, okay? The first detail is the cover letter. A good cover letter can make a big difference between rejecting the paper and accepting the paper. Because I'm gonna read the cover letter, I'm gonna look at the title, I'm gonna look at the subject that you are studying, that you are researching, and I will decide to say, okay, I think this is interesting. Who are the guys that I should send this paper to review? Exactly. So make sure that you explain well. I have seen cover letters of 1 page, completing one space. And I have seen cover letter with double space in just 1 paragraph. The guy was forcing me to read the abstract before everything. Right? So it's very important that your cover letter show me, I'm giving something that you're gonna attract me to read the abstract. Here's examples of rejection letter, and look at here in this rejection here. The guy, look at the amount of information here. Was selected a student. Look at here. Have you read the paper? I find this is a mere traditional exercise for training program. It's just another use of language, nothing new. And they reject. You gotta show why use for training, why that thing, why it's new, what are you doing? Okay, so they can call attention for that. Yeah, we talk about the rejection. We have to talk about this. Oh, yeah, this is very important. I have seen this before. Now, guys received rejection letter and try to attack the reviewers. Send the letter back to the editor. No, this guy don't understand, and the editor needs to write back and say, hey, take it easy. This is not against you. They are just, they are colleagues that are reviewing your paper, and they are make good suggestions for you to improve your paper. Okay, just be careful. Okay, don't make this type of mistakes. Send it back, because you just create conflict with somebody that's probably going to be your colleague in the future in same department. Okay, and many of my colleagues here in K-State, they are editors of big journals. And one guy in my department, he was editor of the Geomorphology Journal for 12 years. And you can imagine the amount of things that he received. He would come and talk, and say, hey, man, I don't know, I think I'm going to retire because I'm tired to receive this type of thing. So pay attention for these things, okay? One thing that I always advise my students, some do, others not. Ask people to read your paper. Ask your colleague. If you have a colleague that works in the same field of you, ask them to read. Okay, if they are not for your field, but they are willing to read your paper, give to them to read. That's when you're gonna see if you write well, because if somebody that's not from your field can understand what you are doing a good job. Okay, and I always tell my student, Dogs know that, I always tell him, hey Dong, put this aside for at least 1 week, because you cannot find your own mistakes anymore. You are so used to read that every day, every hour, that you cannot know what's going on. So leave your side, go do other things, and come back and try to read critically. You're gonna find your own mistakes. Now, so far, I can do the job for you guys because I'm your advisor. But when you graduate, nobody gonna read the paper for you and find your mistakes. The reviewer is gonna do the job, and you don't want to do that. Okay, so you gotta train yourself to put aside, leave it there 1 week, 10 days, go back and start to read again. Fresh mind, you're gonna see it. You say, oh, I should be write this way. Looks better. Okay. Oh, I missed that expression here that Marcelo told that I should be using. Try to do this way. I guarantee you're gonna do much better from that. What else? Rejection or revision letter. The revision letter is something very, very important that I want to highlight here. You got to facilitate the work of the review. If the review send a letter to you, or the editor send a letter to you with 5 problems that you need to fix, you got to highlight in your letter the 5 problems and tell the way you fix the problem. Make that thing easy for them. Line 5, you ask me to do this. So here how I did in lines this, this, and this. And the guy gonna go there to check. Okay? I'm helping. Sometimes the guy gonna go just look at saying, oh, he did. Done. If you don't help him, if you create problem for him, he's gonna create problem for you. It's gonna hit back on that. Okay? So it's very interesting to see here. Look at here. We appreciate that the review comments, the follow are all point by point response. The first question was that. Here's my answer, here the way I did. Okay? And for every question, I answer that way to help him to understand what I did. I'm help to facilitate his work. This is another example here. It's not clear how the jet edge is defined. Okay, so we define the jet ad where this is classified, blah, 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 on page, bottom page, blah, blah. So I explain clearly how I did. For every question, I put everything there for them to understand, okay? This is a topic that I wanna finish here, plagiarism, okay? It's very serious. I gave the example with a professor in Japan. that was very well known, very famous, until they discovered that he was faking data, that he was copying things. Okay, and people figure out this out. Okay, this is very important. So if you don't know how to cite, okay, and I'm telling this, as an international student, one of the first things that I did was to talk to people in the library to help me, okay, to teach me how to cite. Looks different, okay? Look the original there, look at the restatement there, but this is considered word-by-word copying. Okay, it's very easy to do this. And we think that people don't know. But remember, people that are review your paper, they are experts. Okay, so make sure that if you don't know how to cite, go to the library. Talk to people there. Ask them, how can I cite this? What's the best way to put it this way? And they're gonna teach you, and you're not gonna make this type of mistake that we find in many places, okay? Thank you. Questions? Oh, abstract. Yeah, abstract is going to depend of different journals. No, I think abstract needs to be enough clear so that they can understand well what we're doing. So what's the problem? You know, what are my questions? Okay, how I'm analyzing that and what I found. Okay, abstract is going to depend. Abstract, there are journals that are going to accept 250 words for abstract. There are journals that are going to say we just need 100. So you got to pay attention. What I think it's important to have in the abstract, how much information I need to put in there. Okay, that's the most difficult thing. So what kind of information I need to put in my abstract? I'm gonna call attention for that. And there are cases that I saw, a student write first the abstract before writing the paper. And it should be the other way. Write the abstract after you finish the paper. It's gonna help you a lot, yeah. How you keep track of the literature? That's a good question, man. There are many softwares that people use today. Now, every time that I read a paper, how many of you use EndNote? That's it? Just 3, 4? So you guys use another type of software for it? Okay, good. I was a little to say, yeah, it's very, very important to have that because this is gonna help you a lot when you need to prepare the citations in the end of your paper there, okay? And some people, they read new paper every day. For instance, I do. Every day I go in my field there, look at that. Remember that I told you name of the people there? I know some people that are always publishing at least 5 papers a year. The first thing that I do is see what he's doing this year. I check, And if he cites someone that I don't know, I go after that paper to see what he's doing. That's the way I keep my literature review updated. And I know what's going on in the field. Sometimes when you are too good, these people are gonna call you, newspaper. Hey, can you comment in the paper for this guy? If you are not updated literature, what are you gonna tell to the journalist that want your comments? Oh, I don't know. Which guy? Okay, so it's very, very important that you keep up to date what is going on in your field. That's the way you show off that you are prepared to be a doctor. Your committee is going to see this. When you're going to do a presentation, you're going to show that what you know. And cite people. I try to go from what's going on this year back. So January, February 2020, let me take a look at what's going on this year. I use Google Scholar to see. I use ResearchGate. To see people, ResearchGate, there's something. People won't publish it, they go there and put the paper there, right? And that thing comes in email. This guy send the paper, put a paper there. Go there, check what's paper he put there. That's new. Now, I mean, I was updating the literature, what's going on in the field. Yeah. Yeah, everyone has a different way to develop the paper. Right. The question that she asked me, how I would do in writing the paper, is prepare the figure to try to figure out how I'm going to put the paper or write the paper and do the figure. It's going to depend on each one. For instance, I'm going to give, when I write a proposal with my colleagues, we first develop a figure of the problems that we are looking at. So here's the topic. Let me give you an example here. Let's suppose that we're going to look at fire. Okay? We're going to look at fire and fire in Australia. And we write in the whiteboard, fire in Australia. And they start to see 3 guys, that's okay. What's the problem with fire in Australia? Everyone comes in this, I think these things happen in Australia because it's not different from the United States. And we write that little things there to help you to frame the problem. Okay, so what are the problems? For instance, in Australia, no, and this came from an idea, talk to a visitor that came here. She was an expert in wine, and she was telling that the fire in Australia have decimated the wine industry in some parts of the country. And the first thing that came to our mind said, whoa, that's not different from what we saw in California. Okay, can we write a proposal to submit for this fund agency, or can we write a paper to talk about the problems between fire in developed countries? So the wine industry, how the fire affects the wine industry. And we start to put the design there, how we're gonna approach, okay? So here's the problem. Here's the topic, fire and why. What's going on? And you start to develop this thing. Oh, we need to understand more. Go to the literature. Look at what's going on in the literature about fire in different places. And you create that list of things and you start, so how much is associated, how much is similar for different location. And we start to develop this. As soon as you start to draw that thing, you start to see, okay, how these people analyze this problem here. In this country, they did this. In this place, they did this. In this place, they did it. What they have that are similar. What is missing there? Okay, that's exactly the things they should think. So in develop the idea, okay, and help you. So think before writing, it's gonna help you to create the structure of the paper. Okay, that's what I think that's important. That's the way I do. Now, my advice, they would come and say, hey, I have this thing here. Say, hey, let's walk. And I would go with him, walk, in the university during the day. I'm not kidding. He would take me for a 30 minutes walk and say, tell me what you think. Yeah, we start talking and they say, well, it's not clear. No, try again. And I would explain. And I said, okay, that's the way you should say. That's the way you should frame everything because it's clear. Okay? And more important, I always have a piece of paper like she has, take notes. I hate when my students come to my office without anything in hand, because you talk, comes here, lives here, next day they are doing the same. And every time they come and first thing I look at it, I say, yeah, I have it here, and you start to take notes. That's the way you should do. Because sometimes you tell the right thing all the time, and you leave the door, damn it, I forgot, what did he say to me again? Okay, so that's why it's important. Sit, think, and write. How are you going to approach that? Any other? You guys are tired? Yeah, it's just Tuesday. No more questions? No? Thank you.
Before you leave, could you just help me Thank Professor Caldas for his presentation today. I'm sure some of you found it, well, we all found it very helpful and insightful. So thank you so much. I just want to remind you that we have another event in this same room on Friday at 1:30 to 3 p.m. It will be presenting your thesis in 180 seconds. So please make sure to attend that event, as well as to fill out the post workshop survey to get credit for this event. Thank you so much for coming.